Starting, it's going. Let's bring this up. It's a pretty landscape. Give me the login. Come on, you can do it. Why is it not letting me log in? Right, because the other one's running. There it goes. So I would like to shut the other one down, but it's updating. These have plenty of RAM. They should be able to handle multiple machines going at the same time, but they don't do very well. I'm thinking that the hard drives are crappy. At home, I can run 2 or 3 machines and not have any real slowdown. But here, slowly, slowly, slowly. So no questions, no exciting stories. Some of you I saw yesterday. So Thursday the 8th, February 8th, I think I said this to some of you yesterday, but it's going to be an in-service day, and I'm pretty sure there will be no classes that day, which is next Thursday, right? Not this one, but the next one. So if it ever logs in, that one I turned on by accident. If I were to just save state on that, it would just leave it where it is, right?
I think so,
I'm just thinking it may never get into this one if I don't close that one. Oh, there it goes, finally. Sorta. Seems to be ignoring my suspend. Okay, this is not what I wanted to do with this morning. It's also one of those videos that's going to start with a long dead thread. Sure. Yeah. Yeah, for one of them we use Community Assist just because, and I'm going to actually do that one for you, assuming I ever get in here. We're going to use both Community Assist and MetroAlt for that. So you're going to use MetroAlt for most of it, but the union, we're going to join two things, and we're going to join them from two different databases. And I don't really have a good demo for that, so I'm just going to do it. And then you can, assuming we get in there. This is so slow. Are any of you others having problems? I can't get in there probably until this other one's done updating. Oh, shoot. I guess this one updated too. Don't you love Windows? Yeah. Well, it's good that they update, I guess, in the sense that they're protecting you, trying to protect you. But it would be nice. They used to let you have more control over when it happened. With the newer versions of Windows, they're much more aggressive about forcing it. Why is it saying update and shut down? It's been updating. So eventually we'll get going. Got 15. Technically we're done if that clock were right. It's weird, that clock has been all over the map in the last couple of quarters.
This class open, this classroom open, like open outside of this class today.
So Fridays.
Fridays.
Fridays are open. Maybe Saturdays, we were talking about trying to get that. Anytime there's not a class in here, but it's actually pretty heavily utilized because the labs upstairs are.
Fridays. Is it, what time is it open?
What time does us? What? 1 to 6? Was it not earlier than that? You know? Did it get any earlier than 1? You know? It can be earlier. Yeah, the room is, there are no classes on Friday. So, that being said, if 6 or 7 different classes of people are trying to get in here, might have to fight over the machine.
Right.
I don't know how many people actually show up on Friday, so 4. Yeah, that's not too bad. Not too bad at odds that you'd have the same machine. Yeah, well, just finish. Okay, that one's down. That's good. Let's start. I think we might be there. All right, so the very beginning of this video, we'll have lots of stuff that you really don't want to see. I'm going to launch SQL Server. Hopefully. Did I hit it? Is it coming up? I think I hit it. Maybe not. I see little circles beside my. Something's loading. Yes, I did hit it. It shouldn't be so slow now. The other one has stopped. They're all down except this one. When it does that fall update, which is what this is for all of these, it basically reinstalls Windows. You know, basically overwrites and reinstalls Windows. Keeps your files and stuff. So it's a somewhat new version of Windows. Hey, I think we are in. I will, let's launch this. And this is big enough, or do you need a zoom? I know I usually zoom as well. Anybody, is this too small? From the back? It's a bit too small. Oh, it's okay. Everybody okay with that? So I'll just zoom when we need to look over here. So this is basically, we're going to do some set operators, and these are things that actually SQL Server didn't do until fairly recently, but Oracle has done for a long time. And when I say set operators, they really resemble the stuff you do for Venn diagrams. You guys remember your early high school algebra where you drew Venn diagrams? So it's sort of those same kinds of things. So a union is everything brought together, right? But you have to have things have to resemble each other that you're bringing together. So this is actually in the assignment because I couldn't think of a different alternative. But I am going to make a union between the community assist person table and the employee table, right? Because they have the similar fields, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, we'll do it from Metro Alt first. I'm going to select employee last name, employee not first name. I'm also going to do so employee email, and I think I'm going to alias these. You don't have to, but I'm going to just say last name, first name, email, and let me break that a little just to have some room. And then I'm also going to bring in employee city, and I think that's all I'm going to do, and I'll alias that as city. Okay, so from employee, right? So if you do that, oh, and I need to, I'm in master, so let's do use Metro Alt for right now. I'll change it to community assist in a moment. I'm just going to run it by itself. Then it's okay. If you run this, you'll see that you get all the that information for the employees, right? So if we want to join all the people here with all the people in community assist, we can use a union operator. Again, if you do think of your Venn diagrams, the union is both circles brought together, right? Everything in both circles. So I am going to do, and this is you haven't seen this really either, but I'm going to select community assist dot dbo dot person. Well, actually, we don't have to do that. Let's just do select person last name, person first name, person email, and we'll do person address city. So we'll have to do an inner join down here too. So from, this is where we need to do the community assist dot dbo dot person. And I'm going to alias that as P so I don't have to write that twice. And I'm going to do inner join community assist dot dbo, can't type, dot person address, and I'll just call that PA on P dot person key equals PA dot person key. Okay. So this is a join, but what we're doing is that the fields on the other side of the union have to match the number and type of the fields on the other side. Right? Does that make sense? So we've got name to name, you know, last name to last name, first name to first name, email to email, city to city. The one I didn't alias the bottom ones because it's the top ones that'll come through. So if I run those together, so notice there's 500 rows for employees. If I run these together, I get 629 rows. Because everybody, and we could order it if we wanted, but everybody that is in the employees and in the person table are now blended into one result table. Does that make sense?
Oh, it's not double. It's not double. Yeah.
Yeah, it should only be unique. Now, it looks bad because of the way there are all these glasses and stuff. That's an artifact of how I populated the names. As I said, I did two arrays. I did a first name array and a last name array, and I just looped through and randomly chose. Weirdly, I don't think any of them, although I might have excluded them if they were the same as another one. There are a lot of glasses, but I think they all have different. Well, there's two Lewis Greens, but one is from Metro Alt and one is from the person. So the point is just that it's a union between two sets, and that the two sets have to have the same number of fields represented, and they have to be the same type. It doesn't actually care if they match logically. It just matters that they have the same number and that the data types match. Does that make sense? So you could combine unlike things as long as the data types and number of fields match. Why you do that way. This is kind of useful, like if you had a customer list and you know, an employee list and another list, and you just needed to bring all the people together, you know, that kind of thing. Or if you needed to join, and typically I would say you would be joining them from different databases, possibly. Notice the way we joined here. This is called, oh, my brain was down today. It's a full, you're a full path, but there's another word for it. We've got the database name, the schema name, which we'll talk about more later, and then the table name. same here. Community uses the database name, the qualified path, that's what it's called. The schema, and then the table name. If it were another server, then it would be the server name, database name. So you could do, if we had another server on here, like localhost, you could say localhost dot communityassist dot DBO dot. You can query across databases and servers. Does that make sense? Sure. And if you were to flip this, the difference would be that the column names would be person. The column names come from the top one. Right, that's why I alias them, because they're not all employees. Does that make sense? You want me to flip it? It really doesn't make a difference.
You still only both use once, right? Use Metro.
Yeah, you only need it once. You don't have to run it every time. Once you're in that context.
What I'm saying is for this, unions want in substitutes
So I didn't qualify Metro Alt, right? That's why I have to use Metro Alt. If I had said use Metro Alt.dbo employee last name, or if I'd done from Metro Alt.employee, Metro Alt.dbo.employee,
Okay,
then I wouldn't have had to say use Metro Alt.
Three. You do three or more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I could say if I did, because these all come from employee, if I said Metro Alt.dbo.employee, then I wouldn't have to be in any particular database. It would know right away where everything came from.
But you have to do that because once you get going beyond two, you go into three or how many n number, the user really is irrelevant. You want to just do DBO designation.
I'm not sure if I understand.
I think the answer to your question is yes. If you're going to pull in more than, as you pull in 3, 4, 5 databases into the same sort of thing.
Right, and I'm not sure.
You need to use the qualified path so it knows.
I've never seen that with multiple unions like that. I suppose you could. That's actually a good question. I don't know if you can have more than one union per state.
Maybe it may be a good limitation. That's good.
But you don't, because I said I'm using Metro Alt, I don't have to do that part. But if you were bringing them in from other things, yeah, union I think is always, I mean, literally it's a Venn diagram, and I don't know, it is possible, because in a Venn diagram, you could say, you could have 3 bubbles. It is possible that you could union for all 3. I haven't tried that on the phone. The next one we're going to do is intersection, and that's that part, right? The part where that is shared by the 2 sets. Are we ready? You ready? Okay. So I'm not going to select everything here because this is sort of dependent on the fields. But I am going to, since we're in here, I'm going to do select employee city. And I'm going to alias it as city. And that's actually all I'm going to do from employee, which I'm missing an E up there, I'm aware. And I'm going to do intersect. I didn't spell that anything like right. And I'm going to do select person, address, city. From, and then again, because we're in Metro Alt at this point, I need to do community assist .dbo, and you can't leave out the schema. Dot person address. So what this will do is it shows me the cities that are in common. Right? Those are the cities that are in both the first set and the second set. Does that make sense? For when you have the list of all of the employees with their cities and all the people with their cities, these are the cities that are shared. That's what the intersect does. And I only listed the city because if you try to, it goes by the row. So if I listed the rest of the fields in the row, nothing would intersect. Because the data is different after that. Yeah.
So it does the automatic distinct.
Yeah, basically it does do an automatic distinct. And I think it would be the same even if we flip this. So, whereas the next one isn't the same if you flip. So I'm just going to copy that down. Do another intersect. And then copy this down. Although the alias is meaningless in the second part. All right, so it's going to say person, address, city. I could alias it up here. All right. And I think it'll have exactly the same answer. It does. Because what's the same between the sets is going to stay the same, right? These can be useful. I mean, if you're looking for intersections, I mean, when you're doing certain kinds of analysis, figuring out what kinds of things are common to sets, joining sets, these things can be useful.
How come you don't have to bring the schema?
Because I'm in Metro Alt. I'm already in Metro Alt as a context, so I don't have to list those things out for employee. If I were in master, it would work if I listed it all out. Does that make sense? If I changed my context, which I will in a few minutes, to community assist, then I'd have to do the opposite, right? Then I could say select person city from person address, intersect, and then I'd have to say select employee city from metro alt.dbo.employee. Right, so it's just whichever context you're in. The one that's not in context, you have to do the qualified path for. Okay, so the next one I think is accept. As I said, I'm trying to remember from a year ago, which just says I don't do these operators all that often. Let's do exactly the same thing, except accept. These are the cities that, and this is a little bit different. These are the cities in person address that are not in employee. So there's a couple of null, there's an empty string and a null. Artifacts from having used this in class at different times. And then there's New York, Puyallup, Redmond, and Shoreline. Those are in person address city, and they are not in employee. We get a different list if we flip this, though. because what it will say is what's an employee that is not in person address. So I'm going to do so when I run this, only Tukwila, right? Because it's basically it's saying anything that is not that is in the first set that is not in the second set. When I did person address city, it had a lot more fields because there were a lot of cities that were not in the employee. In the employee one, the only one that's in it that is not in person address is Tukwila. Does that make sense to you?
So the way the order is you first, it says who's in the community system, what's not in it.
Right. So if we do this one, so we do employee city, we run that. I'm just going to execute it, although I might want to do, let's do it distinct. I'll take the distinct out in a moment because the operator creates a distinct. All right, so it's got Bellevue, Kent, Seattle, and Tukwila. If we run the other one, and I'm going to do distinct also. It's got, these are the cities it's got. It's got Bellevue, Kent, New York, Puyallup, Redmond, Seattle, and Shoreline, but it doesn't have Tukwila. Does that make sense? Be nice to be able to run them side by side. The thing about accept is that it's whatever is in the top one that is not in the bottom one, right? It's not necessarily like the intersect is always the same, doesn't matter how you flip it. The accept does matter how you flip it.
So whatever is not matching.
Whatever is not matching that's in the top one is returned in that. So again, this one only returns Tukwila, this one returns. So notice if we did the second one, it had Seattle. Let's run the first one again. It has Bellevue, it has Seattle, I think it has Kent. Right, so the only ones that it doesn't have, it doesn't have New York, it doesn't have Puyallup, it doesn't have Redmond, and it doesn't have Shoreline, right? Those are things that are in the person address city that are not in.
So I did like, if you do those checks, do the checks first, so you can see the order. So I did one where it's got, what's the thing? Yeah. And community assist, then input, then metro.
Yeah.
And then the two exceptions. You can see what you
Yeah. Again, so if you want to see something that's in one but not the other, right, you can do accept. But again, you notice I'm only searching for the city. If I started adding other fields, it treats the whole row, not the individual field, right? So they would all be exceptions, or they would. All right, so those are basically the set operators. They're pretty simple to use. There is such a thing as union all. Though I really don't see how it behaves any differently than union. So there's union all and union any. I'm not sure if I did anything with those. I'm just going to real quickly look and see if I did anything with those. Oh, I don't care about that. All right, so Um, Conger ITC, Blogspot. I'm going to do search for set operators. So I have intersect, intersect, accept, accept. I think that's all I did. Union. I don't really have a union all. Just know that there is such a thing as union all, union any, but they don't seem to make much difference. I'm sure they do in certain contexts, but all right, so let's go down to here again. So those are the set operators. As I said, they're fairly new for SQL Server, like 2015. I mean, really new. They didn't exist before that, except for Union. Union's been around for a while. But the accept and the intersection did not exist. But they did exist in Oracle. Oracle had them a long time ago. What? They are part of the ANSI standard, yeah. So most databases, they implement like about 80–90% of the standard. There are aspects of the ANSI standard that are actually progressive enough that no database has managed to do them yet.
That's how we do Oratus.
Yeah.
We get the best percent. This is where we miss. And going in, you still buy it.
Right. Yeah. They'll usually tell you what, I mean, every database out there implements the 1992 ANSI. But after that, ANSI got a little bit ambitious and added things that they really wanted to see. Although the biggest changes to SQL, and we'll deal with this a little bit at the end of the quarter, is that they've added a lot of tools for manipulating XML. And they've also just recently, the most recent addition to the ANSI standard is how to treat JSON coming into the database. Okay, so this part won't take too long either, I don't think. This is modifying data. One of the things about almost everything we've done before this is that all of those selects, whether they're subqueries or joins or whatever, nothing affects the underlying data, right? There's nothing that we did that made a change to the underlying data. It was all pretty safe. It was all just retrieving data. When you start to actually modify data, then you're starting to change the database, and there are some dangers there. The first one is not so dangerous. I'm just going to show you a simple insert, and I'm going to go back to use Community Assist. So I'm going to use Community Assist. And I know some of you run that with every table. You really don't have to. Once you've changed the context stays until you change it again. It doesn't hurt to run it again, but yeah. So I am going to just do an insert into person. And it's really this simple. You could just do insert into person. Now, one of the things you can do, don't ever have to do this. I'll do a quick zoom on this, I guess. If you go into the tables, and I'm going to insert into person. If you grab the columns folder and drag it, it will give you all the columns. That can be a really nice thing.
Now you tell us.
So I will enter into all these things I shouldn't. The password is, well, I mean, we will have to run some functions. So what you want to do, so person key, first of all, if it is an auto number, which is called an identity in SQL Server, if it's an auto number, you don't enter into that field. MySQL lets you overwrite an auto number, but SQL Server will not. So it'll just throw an error if you try to insert into that. You always have values, even if you're only entering one thing, it's values. And then what we need to do is give values for all of these things. So anybody have a good name that's not already in there? What?
There you go.
All right, so we'll do Jordan. And then Michael, and you do single quotes for text. Is that how you spell Michael Jordan?
Yep.
Personal email, let's just do this as MJ. I use Gmail a lot because it's just so easy to type. Although I'm having trouble with it. So the person password is a bit of a we could leave that null, or I could try to use the function on that. Do you guys want to see the functions or just leave it as null? Just leave it null. I left it nullable because I'm just going to do the current date. And then the last one is nullable also. Now, if it's nullable, you don't have to include them in the list. Does that make sense? So I'm going to execute that. It says one row affected. I need to change that text. And if I do select star from person, and I could look for the actual thing, but I'll just run that line. And then I'll go to the bottom of the person. So there's Michael Jordan, MJ, and he has a null for a password. And if we go on, it'll have the current date, but it'll have a null for the seed.
So insert's just the pen, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it just appends to the table. Just adds it to the next row of the table.
So if we add, like, say, Scott Liddell, then we just produce another Scott Liddell entry.
Yes. Well, no. It would be a different person. Or you'd be accidentally entering the same person twice.
Okay, all right. Okay, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It would just add another one.
It would just add a new person that had the same name. Yeah.
Mine got an error because the number of values in the values clause didn't match
So
the
make
column.
sure, get rid of the person key in the top row. Because it's an auto number, you can't enter there. Notice it came up to 130. Now we didn't add an address. And we already looked this up so we could know what the address is, but I'll show you a couple other things. So I'm going,
Before you go, you're saying the key is not really, okay, sorry, it's not the key, it's like you use it as a personal, you're saying it's just an auto.
it's just an auto number.
It's like the primary key. So it
The
just-
primary key is just an auto number. Yeah, so it's called a surrogate key. And if you look online, most of the opinion is that all your keys should be surrogate keys, that they should have no meaning. There are reasons for that. If you make a key based on business logic and your business logic changes, you've got a problem. The other thing is that if you create a key out of something, it's really, really hard to maintain uniqueness, and the key must be unique. So the general consensus is that you should just randomly number your keys, just auto number. That being said, the one place where that gives you real headaches, and this is a fairly real world thing, is when you're trying to merge two databases, both of which have auto numbers, right? Because there's no logic. You can't just mix the numbers because they all have the same numbers, but they're representing different things. And you'll have relationships based on those numbers, and can be a real pain to blend two databases that have auto numbers. That's really the one place where it really screws you up. But in general, it's a better business practice to use auto numbers. All right, so I'm going to insert into person address, and we're going to give Michael Jordan an address. And again, you don't have to do this. And again, you only have to list the columns that you want to put data in. You do have to have anything that's required. You have to put something in, right? Anything that's a required field, you have to include. Now, person address key, again, is an auto number, so that should go away. Person apartment is nullable, so you don't have to do that. And actually, I have, although you can't see this, when we do building tables, I'll show you. There's a default value on city for Seattle, and there's a default value on state for Washington. So if you don't enter those, it'll just automatically enter Seattle, Washington. If you want to enter something other than Seattle or Washington, then you need to include them. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Is there where you can look up, other than on the tables on the left-hand side,
What the
is there a way
default?
to query what fields are required and what fields aren't?
That's a good question. I know ways to query the fields, but I'm not sure if I know how to tell if they're required or not. Over here, it says if they're nullable or not nullable.
Right.
But I'm not sure about, let me try something. This is not part of this. So I'm going to do select. So first of all, I'm going to do select star from sys underscore tables. So I'm going to do that. Whoa. Why is it not like that? What?
You have to take out the last person key after address zip.
No, we want it because it's going to be what ties us to the person.
Okay.
Why is it not like sys tables? Oh, because it's sys dot tables.
Right.
This is okay. So what I'm looking for, these are all the tables, and I want to do person address. So person address, the object ID, is that what I want? Right now I'm exploring, but I won't spend too long doing this.
The answer to the union question is that you can union all day long if you want to. You can just keep unioning and unioning.
How do you tell which table a column is from? So we got the object name, the column name, column ID, user type, max length, scale. Let's try it just a little bit. Let's just do it for one field. where name equals, say, person, address, city. It would be a pain to have to query every column, though. All right, so I have 2 of those. Why do I have 2 of those? 4, column ID, max length, precision, scale is nullable. If it's a 1, it's true. So there is an is nullable there, but how do you get the, I'm looking for like a table ID. There's an object ID. Is that the table ID?
Are we just trying to figure out how to tell if something is
It is
nullable or not?
nullable, yeah.
You
I
can
mean,
hover
you could,
over it. It says if it's null or if it can be null or not.
I was
although
thinking, like a way to query it.
Okay.
if you were doing this from the command line, all those neat things wouldn't be there,
True.
like the hover and the.
That's what you're saying. If you just hover your mouse over the
Yeah,
field
like
you wanna
person
look up.
address tree.
It says what it
and
says what it
null.
is and whether it's nullable. But I think you can. So this tells you that the column is nullable. The object ID. I'm just curious. That might be what connects them. Oh, object underscore ID. Nothing. So it's not the table. I will look into that, but I'm sure it's doable because the list is there for the columns. So if I could figure out which of those things refers back to the table, we could do a join where you could look at all the columns in a table and you could just say, just return that one field is nullable. So it is possible to do that query. I just have to figure out all the ins and outs of it. Everything is queryable. They don't always make it instantly easy. I think there's also, and I'll look into this, where you can just query the schema itself of a table, where it'll return the schema of the table.
Can you do like select the start on sys.com where sys.com is underscore null.
You could. That would actually bring up, but it would bring up all the columns that are nullable for all the tables, right? But that might work too. Anyway, what I wanted to show you here in the values, so person address apartment is nullable, and again, you could just leave it out if you don't want to use it. I'm just going to say that they don't have that. Person address street is not nullable. Where do we want? Well, I usually do something like
1, 2, 3, 4.
yeah, 1002. I'm just going to say Broad Street, wherever that might be. And city, again, if we don't want to do city, we could put it in. But where does Michael Jordan live?
Charlotte, North Carolina.
North Carolina? Charlotte?
He's
So,
one of the,
how do you spell Charlotte? It doesn't matter a lot.
E with an E on the end. Two T's
Two
and one
T's,
E.
okay. The state should be like 2 characters. And person address, zip, I have no idea what the zip is, but we can make one up. 90. I have no idea. I don't care a whole lot. We could look it up. I'm not going to. Now, the person key, there's 2 ways to know what the person key is. If you're doing this address quite a bit later than the other one, you probably should go look it up. But if you're doing them in a sequence, because typically you would be inserting the person and then their address, you could just do, and this only works if it's an identity. You can do ident current, and then you say what the table is, and the table was person. What this returns is the last, and this needs to have single quotes, the last person's ID in the person table. So if you're doing these in a sequence and you don't want to, you won't know what the person key is at the first, right?
Oh, it automatically transported.
It'll automatically pull it. It'll pull the person key that was just generated. So yeah, one at a time. You can't come back later, long time later, and do it because other keys, it'll be the wrong person. So if I execute that, so this time I'll do, so we knew it was 130, right? So I'm going to do from person address. And if we go to the very bottom, so the person address key is 135, but the person key is 130. So it got the right person. And we have Broad Street, Charlotte, North Carolina. So ident current is useful, but again, only if you have auto numbers and only if it's the immediately next query, next insert.
If it's not on them, it's some random screen in here.
Yeah, then you'll get some random person, yeah, and it won't work. The other thing you could do here, don't want to, is you could do a subquery that looks for Michael Jordan. Right? You could, instead of ident current, you could write select person key from person where person last name equals Jordan, person first name equals, etc. That's not as reliable though, either. If there were more than one person with a name, it could cause problems.
No, I see why we have a rule databases. You cannot have duplication.
Yeah, you only,
One duplication could do it just.
it could create havoc, yes, in this kind of relational database. If you do a NoSQL database, they duplicate everything ever. But there's no relational structure, right? It's purely, they're just storing data in mass as text and as JSON text. And when you query, you can, it's just from a relational database standpoint, NoSQL databases are just a mess. But in terms of certain kinds of data, they work really well. All right. The other thing I want to show you about these couple things is that, let's see where I would want to insert here. Let's insert a couple of donations. Insert into donation. And I'll bring the columns up. There aren't a lot of columns in donation. Again, you have to get rid of the donation key. I'll break this a little bit. And the donation confirmation, I don't think I want to do either because it will just auto-generate that. Okay. So we got person key, donation date, donation amount. I'm not going to worry about what person does this. Let's just say it's person 3. It is quite possible in this database that person 3 was somebody that was asking for money, but maybe they've got some money there. Being good now. So the donation date, again, if you do get date, just gives you the current date and time. What? Oh, I do need values. Thank you. Good eye. And then the donation amount, let's just say it's 100. Now I'm going to do a comma. And I'm going to start another parentheses, and I'll say that this is person 109, whoever that is. And we'll do the get date again. And this person is generous. How generous? 400. And I'll do one more with a comma here. And you can do this forever. As long as it's the same table. You can't cross tables doing this. And you wouldn't want to do this and then use ident current because you're inserting many rows, right? It wouldn't know which row to pull from. This will be the last. And this person will do 250. All right, so if I run all of those, it says, you can't see it because it's so tiny, but it says 3 rows affected. And if I go search, I don't like this seat, I should choose the other one. Select, for one thing, I can't see anybody when I sit down here. Select star from donation, and we'll go to the bottom. I'm going to lift this up a little and get to the bottom of it, hopefully. So these are our person keys, the current date, 100, 400, 250. Notice it generated the confirmation key. That's because I did a default, which is basically make GUID. So I didn't enter. I mean, it just makes that. I'll show you the table. The next thing we do after this assignment, but not today, is create tables, and I'll show you some of those defaults and things that can make life easier. Okay, so there's only one other thing I want to show you about inserts. And we've done this already. And this works on any database. In fact, Microsoft was slow to come to that. MySQL had that forever, where you could just keep adding rows. You only have to do values once, and you just do a comma and then the parentheses for each new row that you're adding. And MySQL would do that forever. Microsoft only started doing it a few years ago, but that is also ANSI standard. So I am going to, speaking of tables, I'm going to create a table person 2. And I'm just going to transfer everything from person into this, but I'll put the basic fields in here. So I'm going to go into person and just drag the columns, but I need to like break all of these out and give them a data type. And actually, let's don't do the password entry date, or entry date we could do. Let's don't do the password or the password seed. When we do stored procedures, I will show you how to do the hashing. It's not hard. There's a built-in function. All right, so person key is an int. Person last name is in varchar, just in varchar 255. And actually, I'm going to give this to all of them except the entry date. I wonder, how did I lose the N? Guess I just didn't copy it all. Well, and I see. And I want to get rid of my extra commas. All right, so this one will be date time. So I am not going to make it a primary key or anything. part of why I'm doing this is one, to review, we already did this once, but I'm going to do an insert that brings in all the data. And I'm going to use this person two table for doing the updates and deletes. Because those are a little more dangerous. So if I create this table, what did I just do? We hit the wrong thing. Create. Says it completed. If you refresh on tables, down in there will be a person two. We have a person Z and we have a person two. I could have probably done it with person Z, but we'll do it with this. I'm going to populate it. I'm going to say insert into person two. And I will list all those fields, but you only want to list the fields that you're actually using. So I'm going to do person two, and I'm just going to drag in the columns. And I will break that about halfway. And then I'm going to do the select. And I want all these same fields. From person. So what that'll do is it will take all the people from person and move them into person two. Why is it not like that?
Don't you need a,
Go ahead and highlight it.
I think it'll work, yeah. You don't need a value. Well, I just had to click out of it. So it says 130 rows affected. So if we come down here, and I'm just going to do select from person two. So all the people that were in person are in person two. So
this is our scratch pad table.
this is our scratch pad table.
Now we can,
So I'm actually going to show you how to destroy a database, but first I'm going to show you how to do it right. I am going to update person two. This one is the one that's going to do it right. And I am going to, let's just set, we got Anderson, J. Anderson. Let's say we want to change, so I'm going to set person first name equals, let's change it to Jason. And I'm going to say where person key equals 1. So this is how you change existing data with the update. So if I do F5, and then we select from person 2 again, you'll notice that it's now Jason Anderson, not J. Anderson. All right, this is how you change you know, how you change fields. And you can do more than one at a time. Let's look at Louis Mann. I can change that. I worry about doing it because I think I have links to that in other assignments, but not on this virtual. So I'm going to do update person last name. And I'm also going to update, so it's actually update person 2. You always do the table. And then I'm going to say set person, can't type, last name equals, so we got man for 3. Let's make it into Manning. um, where, well, actually, then I'm going to do a comma after Manning. And we're going to change the email. So I'm going to say person email equals L Manning at gmail.com. And you can keep changing fields by just doing a comma. You do the set only once, and then you do this. And you need to always, pretty much always have a where clause. There's a couple of exceptions. Where person key equals 3. Now, a couple of things about this too. You want to use probably the key field as opposed to like the last name, right? Because if there are multiple people with the same last name, it'll change all of them, right? And we probably didn't want that. So if I run this and I do this, we'll see that it's now Manning, Louis Manning, and the email is also changed. So there are lots of times when you have to change data that's already in the database. It could be because you mistyped it. It could be because somebody got married and their name changed. They might have changed their email. You know, there are lots of times you have to change things. But this is a really dangerous command. It's actually more dangerous even than delete. And I'm going to show you why. All right, but I'm going to do, and if you do follow along with me, you need to do all the steps. I am going to do begin tran. We did this the other day.
Yeah.
So, and you don't want to just write that. It's really important that you execute it.
Because if you delete, you always have backup or backup.
Yeah.
Once you get it corrupted, it's hard. You have to have it constant. Now it's really bad.
Well, in our case, we'd just be screwed because we haven't done a backup. So because there's no backup, you can't really restore from log. So if you were to do this on the regular database, you'd just be screwed, except you could always go back to GitHub and download the script again. But that's not true of a production database usually. So I am going to update person 2. And I am going to set person last name equals Smith. And I'm just going to run that. So if I run that, 130 rows affected. That's the first thing that should give you a heart attack. And they're all Smith. Everybody is Smith. I always, probably it's aging, but the last movie of the Matrix.
What's the begin tran again?
What?
What's the begin transaction again?
It locks other people out of the database and basically makes it so you can roll that change back.
Okay.
Begin tran means you're manually taking over the transaction. Now, if we talked about transactions, every time you execute a query, it's a transaction, but it's an automatic transaction. When I say begin tran, I am manually taking over the transaction. And although I'm seeing everybody as Smiths here, they're not written to the database until I say commit. They are in a temp table, right? It's what I'm reading is the temp table, the intermediate table before it actually writes to the database. In production, you don't generally want to say begin tran when you're like in a query window like this, because you're locking the database until that transaction is finished. So all the time I'm talking, if other people were trying to get in here, they get a database busy signal.
So no money transaction for that, right?
Yeah, nothing would, well, nothing on this table anyway. Other tables might be free. This table is locked. All right, so as I said, I always make the Matrix joke, if you haven't seen the last Matrix movie, which was not very good, but everybody got turned into Agent Smith. So if I don't want to do this, I can roll back tran. and I can highlight just that line, and it says it completed. And now if I run this, you know, everybody's back to the way they were.
So what if you committed by accident?
Then you're just screwed. There's no going back. So generally, the thing is, it's fairly easy. Say you were working on a database late in the evening, you'd had a beer or whatever, and you were working on this, and you just actually just forgot the where clause. You know, it's imagine instead of 130 rows, you had 120 million rows. You basically are just, that's how you lose a job. So if you had backed up the database, I do this in the summer class a little bit. And so what happens is you could restore the backup, and then you could use the log. You can restore the log up to a moment in time. So you can restore the log up to the moment before you did your really stupid thing. So you can recover. But to do that, you have to take the database offline. All right, so there.
I can't roll back. I must have did something to stuff. On fire.
It's not a crucial.
Yeah, to leave. Yeah, so I do roll back transaction.
So you ran the beginning, right?
Yeah, so the thing is, I must have leaving.
Something you did. It's okay for now. One of the things is if you wanted to restore it to its old thing. So here's the thing. So let's just, I'm going to destroy it and then restore it, although it doesn't matter because in the end we're going to drop it. But so I'm going to run this without the train. So everybody is Smith, and there's no way back, because if I do that, it'll say there's no begin, right? Because I didn't do the begin. So one of the things I could do, and this is not something you could do in real life generally, is I'm going to truncate table person 2. And I'm going to execute that. This is the same as deleting everything. So if I run select star from person 2, there's nothing in it. And then I can go up to where we did our query. So insert into person 2. And now if I go back down to person 2, it's all back. All right, but again, in real life, nothing would be that simple. But the couple of things to take away from the update, it's something that you have to be able to do. But generally, you do not want to give your users permission to update. This is something we'll look at later. You want to create a stored procedure that handles the update so that there is absolutely no possibility that they could do an update without a key. Right? It just won't execute. It won't happen. You don't give them update permissions. You give them permissions to update, to run the stored procedure that you done. Same probably with deletions and things like that. You tend to want to couch them into stored procedures. Yeah.
Yeah, so the thing I did is I actually copied the transaction again. When I rolled back train, I actually did the update again where it didn't handle the rollbacks of your stuff.
Right. Yeah. Once you've committed or rolled back, then it's.
This is what copy and paste really.
Yeah. So if you do commit tran, then it's written, right? So commit is when you look at it and you say, yes, this is what I want to do. Right. And so you do commit it and then it's written and there's no going back. If you roll back, that's the one time you can go back. It's not a multiple time thing. When we do stored procedures again, one of the things that we will do is we'll do an if then and a try catch. And basically, if there is an error, we will roll everything back. If there's no error, we'll do a commit, right? So, and you could, although I haven't ever done this in this class, you could make your own errors if you want. Because not everything, a lot of the things that would, as far as the computer is concerned, turning everybody's name to Smith is not an error, right?
That's what you told it to do.
Yeah.
It just did what you told it to do.
So you could do things like if the result set is greater, has more than one row, you could throw an error or something. I've never done that, but I mean, there are things you could do to. But usually, what I do is that you have to. It won't do anything if there isn't a key for the where clause. Does that make sense? And we can look up the key if we need to in the stored procedures. We'll do those later. So we've done most of it. The truncate, as you saw here, is it basically truncate deletes everything in a table. I am going to do a begin tran. I don't think I need to for this. I'm going to do a delete. The delete syntax is really simple. And I'm going to do this on a real table because I want to show you some errors. So I'm going to begin the tran. And this is because I'm going to just say delete from person. Now, normally with this too, you want to say where. You want to give it a specific person. But the thing is that this isn't going to work anyway. Anybody have an idea why? I need to change this so it gets bigger.
Foreign key contact.
Yeah, you can't delete a parent of a child. You know, if you have a primary key that has related records in another table as foreign keys, you cannot delete a primary key column that has foreign keys related to it elsewhere. To put it cruelly, because it would leave orphans, right? You can kill the children and then kill the parent. Right. In fact, that's what you have to do is you have to go through and remove all of the related records before you could delete this. Now, there is a thing which I would advise never doing. When you create a table on a foreign key, you can do cascade delete. What that does is it means if you delete the parent, it automatically deletes the children. That's a bad idea, but you can set that up. Because if you accidentally remove a customer, you would also lose all their sales. Does that make sense? Probably you don't want to do that. You probably, if you really need to get rid of a customer, you would want to have to take the effort to remove the sales first or copy them elsewhere and then do the. So it's there to protect you, but there is such a thing as cascade delete, which would allow the deletes to cascade to the child tables. And that's really dangerous. So this one didn't work. But if I did this on person 2, it would delete everything in the table, right? Because they don't have any child tables. Table 2 isn't related to anything else.
Right.
It's a copy. It doesn't have the relations. So if I were to do just delete from person 2, I just want to select from person 2. We're just going to remove one person. Who do we want to remove? Who's got our ire up? What? Michael Jordan from the bottom. Is Michael Jordan in here? Yep, it is. Okay. So I would say delete from person 2 where person key equals 130. And it would delete just one row affected. And if we do it again, Michael Jordan will be gone. Oops, I don't want to truncate the table. I just wanted to select from the table.
The transaction still in operation. Like,
No, it is not.
when it crashed before that ended,
What?
or when a delete from person fails that transaction.
Oh, you know what? I think it did. I bet if we
It's okay,
did,
you just deleted one person.
yeah. But I mean, I think that you're right. When it crashed, the transaction is over. I think we could see. Yeah, well, let me see. I don't think this will work. That's actually a good question. No, it did. My transaction was still running, so I just returned Jordan.
Yeah.
Good eye. I'd forgotten that I hadn't committed or rolled back.
So if you want to end the transaction without,
So you only have two choices. You either have to commit it or roll it back. There are some things, sometimes they seem to die for other reasons, but now if I deleted it without now that the transaction is closed, they'd be gone for sure. And as I said, truncate will clear everything out of a table. So again, if I were to run that, and then if I were to do select from person, it'll all be gone. It has the same problem. I mean, it'll throw the same errors if they're related columns, right? But there's nothing in here. If you want to actually remove the table, which is different than removing the data, you would do drop table person 2, and it will be gone. The drop table also can throw errors if there are related field records in that table, although it's much more likely to go away than it should be, I think. And again, there's no undos. So when the table is gone, it's gone. The only way to undo would be to restore from backup and bring the logs up. And there's no warning. You know, a lot of programs, they have these nice little warnings. Are you sure you want to do that? You know, they don't give you any warning.
So truncate just clears the data.
Truncate clears the data, and drop table actually clears. If we were to refresh on tables here, person 2 is gone. Person Z is still there, but person 2 is gone. I think that's about everything for this section. And as I said, I'll probably make, in fact, I will make Thursday open lab. If you're all caught up, you can come or not. I think the people that are all caught up as of this morning are about 2. Yeah. So, but you know, the next assignment has this stuff in it. Set operators and the insert, update, and delete stuff.
This covers the next assignment.
Yes. I should look at the assignment to make sure I didn't forget anything that's in there.
Let's go good.
If I remember 3% cost. I can't figure that out.
Oh, so there is one thing in there. We did it, but not on purpose, right? There are times, one reason why it's not forbidden to do an update with no where clause is it is possible you might want to update everything at once. Like you might want to reset all your prices, right? There's nothing in employee or nothing in community assist that I can think of that would do this. Maybe
What
grant
if
type.
you wanted to, yeah, I was like, what if you want to increase the lifetime maximums of grants, for instance?
So let's do update grant type. Although I think before we run the update, we should look at the grant types. So I'm going to do a quick select from grant type. just so you can tell that the update happens. So the thing that we'll do is a lifetime maximum. And let's say we want to increase it by 10%, 5%. What do you want?
5%.
5%.
Either way.
Let's do 5%. You could say set grant type maximum equals grant type maximum times 1.05. And I spelled maximum wrong. And what that would do, so right now the top grant, this is $1,000. So it should go up by 5%, and the next one's 2,700. And then if I do a select from grant type, why did it not do it? Oh, I did grant type maximum. I took up the grant type
Oh.
maximum instead of the.
Instead of the lifetime maximum.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
And so, yeah, I just updated the wrong one, but it's okay. We could do the same thing for, since we're bringing them up by a maximum, let's do it the grant lifetime maximum too. Anyway, this is why it is not absolutely forbidden, is because there are times you might want to do this. So now it's 1,050 instead of 1,000. And I do that because I think I did tell you to give everybody a cost of living raise. Okay, I will copy all this into a blog. You will have an open lab Thursday. What time is it? Is it 11:40 or?
11:40. Yeah.
Okay, so we're a bit early. You can work for a while now if you want, or have an early lunch, whichever way you want. I'm going to put this into the blog. And I'll stop the video. It's been video taken too. I'm not sure if I've added the videos lately, so I'll go make sure I've added them to the list too. And why do I keep sitting in that one?